Okay, next guys I'd like to bring up are the terrible trio, as I call them. Martine, Loic, and Marc, if you wouldn't mind joining us. I will let you guys talk about yourselves first, and then we'll go into Q&A. But what's interesting is, actually, we'll start with you, Martine. So you've actually created how many? 4 companies at this point?
8, but 4 in technology.
4 in technology. Okay, and the other 4? Just quickly, because I don't know about the other 4.
The other 4 are urban capital that I started when my friends who were squatters in New York were thinking that it was cool to move to Tribeca and Soho and squat, and I said maybe it's cooler to get a permit and turn that into a business. And that was in the early 80s when I was a student. I also started an alternative energy company, which is building like 200 million euros worth of wind turbines and solar farms. I also started a biotech company in the 80s, which is now in Canada selling H-tests. And I can't forget the other one. But the ones that are relevant to
this is the sign
the ones
of a
that are
true
relevant to
serial
the crowd here in technology are Viatel, which I started in 1990, and when I sold it was worth 1.2 billion. I started Jastel, which is the second largest publicly traded telecom operator in Spain. It's also worth around $1 billion. I started Ya.com, which I sold to Deutsche Telekom for 550 million, but they are now again sold it to Vodafone, like this week, for again 500 million. We invested 38 million. And Phone, which is what I'm doing now, which is
going to get sold for how much?
Well, in the billions. No, but I think what I wanted to say about serial entrepreneurship, I was listening to Stelios and the fact that I used to speak very poorly of people who were children of rich parents, but now I have 4 children. So I empathize through my children with Stelios. And I think that in my case, I really wanted to make money because my dad was a professor, my mother was a teacher, and all I heard when I was growing up was we have no money. So that was an incentive to make money. I also wanted to do well because they threw me out of Argentina and killed my cousin, the fascist government of Videla, and almost killed my father and I. So we were forced to emigrate, so I wanted to prove that it was worth for me to be alive and do something useful. So I had something to prove. So I think being a serial entrepreneur. But then somebody else said that an entrepreneur is somebody who can't get a job. And certainly when I was at Columbia University and I would go for a job interview and they would say, how do you see yourself in 5 years? And I would say, at least as your boss. And I wouldn't get a job, I can't understand why, Somebody says that to me, they get a job, somewhere else. Anyway, I don't know.
Okay.
Is that a
That's good. That's a good beginning. Loic, tell us a bit about you.
So I've given up trying to measure the size of my balls with Martin for a long time. So he beats me, but I still have a few years to go to fight back. But I created a few companies, 4 actually. I don't want to get into those details, but I sold another advertising company to BBDO. I sold one of the top web hosting company in France to France Telecom. A blog company, actually was more like partnering with Six Apart, which became #1 worldwide. And the last company is kind of fun. I spent 3 months helping a president win, Sarkozy, which is so I took as a business, and it's very different. But I was part of his online campaign and tried to gather 1,000 bloggers behind him and organize a big conversation around. So I'm quite proud of
and
having
you won.
seen that. Well, I didn't win. No, I helped. But it was very interesting to me. So that's a blog post, and I'm also a blogger. That's a blog post I cannot really write, which is like, I'd love to write it, but the differences between business and politics, it's so different that I'm now back into creating another business. And you know
So you've decided not to take any role in the Sarkozy government.
That would be very arrogant to me to say, no, I did not decide to. No, I mean, I just helped. I announced at the beginning I would just take a few months to help my country because I think France needs to go out like, well, let's not get into politics, but yeah, just one thing. Get out of lying to people to the young by telling them they can succeed by working less, for example, is a huge mistake, and that's why it's been 4 years, and that's why I decided to back him and support him. That's one of the reasons, and I could devote a few times. And I said I would go back to business. But it was very interesting to see how those politicians behave. He's very well surrounded, and he takes the internet very seriously.
So tell us about you were talking about how politics and entrepreneurialism are different. Tell us about your 10 lessons of what not to do.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it in a sentence. But basically, I'm pretty sure Marc and Martin are also, and you, then meeting people all the time who ask, young entrepreneur who ask, how can I create a company? Tell me how I should do it. And so I do it by reverse, like what you should do to make sure you never create anything. And so these are like very simple. First, like wait for the idea of your life. You can wait forever, right? It's like, it's not happening this way. And Niklas said it doesn't happen that way. You cannot, it's like dream about a revolutionary idea and wait. People wait all their lives. So it's just start doing things. It's only execution that matters. I guess you can take any domain, and Stelios has proven it with businesses where everything was done or looked to be done. So that's the first one. The second one, very strong, is don't share your idea. As an investor, right, you get emails. Still today, I get everyday emails which are like, and please sign the NDA before, right? And then I send you my business model. It's super secret. Be careful. I don't want you to tell anybody, right? And if they send this to me, then I don't even, bother, right? It's like, so I think the new rule is share as much as you can because people will tell you, will help you, and will criticize you. If everybody tells you you will fail, then probably do it anyway. So another one, quickly, someone did it already. It's like, of course, somebody is probably doing it. There are no revolutionary ideas. It's only execution. So if somebody did it, it's not the reason. You will always find something. Focus on market research and don't execute. I think the best market research right now is beta. Why do we have in those Web 2.0 trends? Everything is beta because we try things, we do them with the customers, rather than being secretly in a room doing market research and trying to invent something that doesn't exist. We experiment. I mean, look at Flickr, you look at YouTube. They start with the customers, they improve it, they accept openly criticism, they do it in beta. It's very, very different. Then plan a huge marketing. Look at YouTube, word of mouth only. So if you get the beta version right, like Gmail did, then you get the users, right? I will not go through all of them, but like, don't talk to your competitors. I hear that all the time, like criticize your competitors, which is a big difference with politics, by the way. In politics, you have to, I was struck by that. I was on a panel with a socialist friend, and he had to criticize me, or somebody from another party. He had to do that, and like, we cannot agree. Whereas I think it's like very different today. We have to, talk to all to everybody and learn from everybody's mistakes. And Niklas said the other, so I'll stop here, but like, try to focusing on making money for yourself is a sure way to fail. And I know a few entrepreneurs, unfortunately, who did that mistake. They try to get rich as a focus, right? Rather than trying to change the world, as Niklas pointed out. So here are a few you see, which are very obvious.
Okay, I guess I'll have to refine my pitch after hearing this.
Oh, and talk to VCs.
Talk to VCs. Is that Dan?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Marc, speaking of VCs, welcome to the club, Marc.
To the dark side.
That's right.
So my story is a we story. We are three brothers. And we always dreamed of starting a company together when we were 12, 14, and 16. I have 2 younger brothers. And our problem was that we wanted first to be an entrepreneur and then had to find an idea and a product on which we could start our company. So it was in 98 when we all were ready right out after university. And we said where to go and where to find our idea. And we basically took the next plane and went to Silicon Valley and worked there as interns in various startup companies, spent the evenings in Stanford Business School and Stanford Engineering School, listening to people like Steve Jobs, telling the graduates at Stanford Business School, forget investment banking, forget consulting, go to Europe and find love, which meant for us, go to the US and find your idea and start it back in Europe, which then turned out to be the eBay idea. And in 98, late 98, we, of course, like many others, didn't realize the magnitude of eBay's business model. They just had gone IPO, but it was one of many, many ideas the Valley talked about. And so we went back in January 99, didn't have a clue where to get the programmers, the IT people to program the technology, didn't have a clue where to get the money to start the company, didn't have a clue where to find people to start the company. So bit by bit it came together, and in February 7, we started our online auction platform. We competed it with big companies like Bertelsmann and Metro, which is a big German retailer, and everyone told us, you have no chance, they will crush you, their budget is much bigger. And we said, well, we just go for it. If we don't manage to succeed, we will close it down in 6 months. We try to not lose too much money, but we give it a shot. What can we lose? We have good education, so probably we'll get a proper job afterwards, and we just tried. So we went for it. We became market leader within 3 months because we sold our own toys. We had liquidity on the market from day one. So my roller skates and my brother's bicycles and CDs were on the platform from day one. And others, of course, like the big managers from big corporations, don't do such stuff. So we were market leaders, and then eBay came, and Pierre Media, the founder of eBay, he obviously was our big hero from the Silicon Valley times. And 3 months into the game, right out of university, if then someone writes you a big check, you probably say yes. Well, we said yes, and it probably was one of the biggest mistakes, because eBay by now is the largest international marketplace. eBay Germany is the largest international marketplace for eBay, probably worth 10 billion by now. Some people say it's bigger than Amazon worldwide. We then led eBay Germany for another year, went into new countries, and then said, we're entrepreneurs, we want to start something new. So we thought, what are the big trends? And at that time, early 2000, it was broadband, the rise of broadband and the rise of wireless. We just had the UMTS auction, the 3G auctions in Germany and the UK, where in Germany the big carriers, the big telecom operators paid 100 billion Deutschmark. So we thought, those guys, those big corporate guys, they probably don't know how to fill the big pipe, how to create content for the cell phone. So we said, why don't we try it? And we partnered with big German and now European electronic retailers and wanted to build the Yahoo for the cell phone. And it quickly turned out that people don't care about weather or stock prices or sports news on the cell phone, because you have that everywhere. You have it in the newspaper, on the radio, on TV, on the fixed line, internet. You don't need that on the cell phone. Maybe if you're on the road once a year, but you don't need it regularly. But there was one thing which caught our attention, and that were silly ringtones. Beep, beep, beep. Really horrible noise. No one liked it. We were just grown out of the target group, which is probably 16 to 24. And there were also these gray and green pictures. No one could really recognize what it meant. Is it a face or is it a character? And we said, well, people are willing to pay money for this kind of little entertainment, and it only works on cell phones. It doesn't work on a PC. It doesn't work on a TV. So we focused on this because we had the vision, and vision is probably too big a word, but we kind of saw that eventually it would turn into a real music file, and it would be the real MP3 or even MP4 quality, and it would be, with the pictures, it would be high-resolution colored screens. So for us, it was kind of obvious that down the road there would be more high-quality entertainment. And so we said, let's go for it. And Then we had this big discussions with the music labels, and you all know they are greedy, so they wanted the second you tell them that you make money with their stuff, they want basically all of it, and you probably have to pay on top of it. So we always said, we're not making a lot of money, we're not profitable, we're still building the business. So they gave us okay rates. But we then thought, why not try, since we lived in Berlin, and Berlin is probably one of the creative cities in Europe right now because there's cheap living space and many artists come to to Berlin. We said, why not try to create our own ringtones? So I am happy to bring to you the original Crazy Frog, not localized to US standard, not censored. So we didn't cut off a little thing, which happened in the US, or which we had to. And please show them the movie in case someone has forgotten how it looks like.
What's going on?
Der Crazy Frog ist zurück. Hol dir diesen fetten Beatburner in Jap.
So two remarks, short remarks on the Crazy Frog. The Crazy Frog was designed by two artists, young artists in Berlin. Didn't cost that much money. You see, we don't spend so much money on the color and the makeup of this video because this is direct selling. People basically, especially young people, they switched on the TV screen because we were constantly advertising, and they use it like their internet destination site. So they switch on the TV. They don't have to wait for their father to let them use his computer. They just go to the TV screen, type in 5 times 3, and then have a Crazy Frog on their phone. And the Crazy Frog became such a phenomenon that it was in the #1 hit in the CD single charts in 25 countries, including the US, for 4 weeks. And that showed to us that there's a lot of, you can do a lot outside the traditional media and create your own content if it is targeted to a special group and to a special device. Now, quick word on what we did then. We sold...
I think
yeah.
Nikesh has been kind enough to give everyone a copy of Crazy Frog. Is that right?
So quickly, we took Jamba into basically worldwide in the US and Russia, Asia, Australia, which was a big surprise. We would have thought that we would have been copied much faster. But the good thing about TV advertising is that many people think that TV advertising doesn't pay back. And what we did is we tested it with $10,000 and then with $100,000 and then with $1 million. And at some point in 2005, we spent $70 million in 1 quarter on TV advertising worldwide. And just to give you a figure, that ringtones by now is a serious category, a serious music category. There are several hundred millions in turnover Jamba did in 2005 and is doing even more now.
So Mark, let me just cut you off briefly there, because one of the things that interests me is that actually if you look at the mobile space for investing, there are very few consumer mobile successes.
Right.
I mean, Martin, you invented callback back in the 90s, but you haven't done any mobile actual play since then. You haven't created a mobile-related play since then. So I would love to get your thoughts on that. All of you are passionate about the internet. All of you are looking for big opportunities. Jamba was a great success, but we don't see many out there. Why is that?
Well, I think that what we're doing at Phone is, if it's not mobile, it's nomadic. Let's say we built the largest Wi-Fi network in the world in a year, and we're adding like 20,000 hotspots a month, which is the size of T-Mobile Wi-Fi. But T-Mobile has Wi-Fi and it has mobile, right? And we only have Wi-Fi. Why? Because there's an international scam that's called GSM licenses. And if you have them, you're part of it, and if you don't have them, you're left out, and that's why there hasn't been so much, so many new things going on. But now there's Wi-Fi 802.11n, there's WiMAX, there's parts of the spectrum that haven't begun out. So in terms of telecom, I think finally the game is opening up. And in terms of content, I would disagree with you, Danny, because I think there's been a lot of good stuff that's been created, and certainly Jamba is an example of an incredible new category that who would have guessed that people would have, paid fortunes for that silly frog,
Yeah. Loic, any thoughts?
I think it's the main reason is the standard. There is no standard with the phones. I mean, if you have to port a web application to a phone, you need to translate it into how many systems you have. You have Symbian, then you have a BlackBerry. You have, it's just too many. On the web, you just do one, and I think that's the main reason. It's terrible when you want to have a service there, except ringtones, right?
Yeah, I think the screen is just too small. It's just not fun to do much on those small screens, and even them getting a little bit bigger. It's just so difficult to do serious, entertaining stuff on it. And then also, as Martin said, you're walking a walled garden. You always need the operator to work with you if you want to do something which is integrated into the network and really interesting. Even presence, you have to work with the operator. And with a fixed line internet, it's so much easier. You just plug in your server, you program your site, you put it up, and then the world can see it. So we have not seen until today something besides ringtones and maybe video as the next generation of pictures, which has really caught attention in that space. GPS is probably bringing. I just saw yesterday the Nokia phone, the N95 with GPS built in, and then Nokia is providing this great location software, these great maps, etc. That is going to be a serious service which is going to be used. But I think in the end, we all like to use the internet or the online, either very efficient, and then the screen again is too small, or we would like to be entertained. And then again, the screen is too small, the capacity is not big enough. Plus, you have to work with big guys.
I mean, what's also interesting is that the N95 was supposed to ship with Wi-Fi, and most operators have shut down the Wi-Fi capability. So surprisingly, there are 110,000 phones in the UK, contraband, that have Wi-Fi functionality. But there are millions that are out there that should have shipped with that and don't. So it's going to be an interesting sort of challenge and battle that goes on between the openness of Wi-Fi and the closed system of GSM.
And I also think there was and is still too much hope for location-based services. I mean, who of us wants to walk down High Street and get a message every second? Come into McDonald's, you get a burger free, and come into Marks and Spencer's and you get a sandwich free, and you just don't want it.
Yeah.
But that's a big trend on mobile, which is happening, which is microblogging. So, how many of you know Twitter? Well, okay, so you know Twitter. No, so I think everybody. So no, it's a very big trend, very interesting that you were mentioning, okay, get close to this shop and you get an advertising message. But in this case, it's us telling the world what we're doing. Like, okay, I'm going to lunch and I'm back from lunch. Very interesting. And it's like useless, pointless. But like on my Twitter, I have like more than 500 followers. And what I send them as a message is, why do you read this? Because it's like, so this is a very weird trend, which is interesting, and I think we see the web and the mobile merging through those instantaneous communications. Like email is getting a lot broken, thanks to Gmail it's better, but because we all have too many. So here it's like, grab me now or never, right? Yeah. So it's a very interesting trend, which I think are making the both converging.
Okay, if I could ask the three of you to join the stage, and while the three of them join, anyone who wants to ask a question, it'd be great if you could either stand up or go to the microphone stand. There's a question right here.
So, especially with Danny here on stage, what is the role of the VC? How important has it been for you to pick the right one or wrong one, and how much time should serial entrepreneurs spend on that?
Now we're moderating you.
I'll volunteer this. I think probably maybe I'm the one who's raised the most money from the most diverse group of VCs, Apex, Advent, since like the early 90s. And Dan is one of a kind. I'd like to say that. He's very good. But I'll explain. No. It's the real one. Okay. It's the real one. I don't bullshit. The GSM operators are a scam, and he's the right thing. But I'll say why. And it's not just that. There's a group of VCs like that. Very few, but there are. There's some who say, okay, sort of the panspermia theory of life. You know, you throw your sperm everywhere, and somewhere life may spring. You know, and I've had previous VCs who endorse the panspermia theory of life. I say this because I don't know if Mark Shuttleworth is here, but he reminded me of that theory yesterday. I thought it was very interesting, not applied to VCs though. But there's the nurturing VCs, the VCs who are there and are helping you, are bringing you contacts, are giving you ideas, nurturing. So my advice to anyone who's starting a business is really interview your VC, like the people, like Eric says, Google interviews people with the LAX theory, that 6 hours at an airport stuck with them. Okay, think you're 6 hours at an airport stuck with your VC. Could you survive? Would you hate him? I think that's applicable.
I'm very good at collecting coffee, getting you Jamba Juice in the LAX. That's the value add. You guys, if you
I think the most important point,
give color.
That is why VCs still are interesting and matter to serial entrepreneurs, because I mean, let's face it, we all have been there, we've done it, we know what the challenges are, we could do it alone, we don't need a helping hand, which is certainly different when you do it the first time. Why serial entrepreneurs still need very good VCs like you, Danny, and there are very few in Europe, and there are actually also very few in the US, if you're honest. You just must make sure that he really understands your business and that he really is a sparing partner. And that is the original idea of a VC, because all the VC's money is green, okay? Everyone has money nowadays, and it's not about who gives you the most money. It's really who you can talk with about your business and who really helps you. Because as an entrepreneur, you're alone. I have the luck to have two brothers. Nicholas has the luck to have Janice. But if you're alone, even if you're 2 or 3 people, and you must make serious decisions and important decisions with basically no information at all, whether to go right or left. And if you then have a serious sparring partner who has seen many other businesses in that kind of with that kind of important decisions, then it's great. That is exactly the guy you need, because there's no one else who can help you. Of course, you have friends, and of course, today I could call Martin and Loic and Nicholas and ask, but they probably will say, no, I have my own stuff, leave me alone. But if he is invested in my business, he is interested, and if then he's good, he probably will help me.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, how do you deal with the problem that most money are now chasing buyouts rather than early stage investments? I mean, the asset class is shifting. It's away from early stage investments into buying boots and buying TDC and that sort of size of deal.
I'm very thankful of that. I'm very thankful.
So you're one of a shrinking.
Yeah. We have minute funds of 300 million euros to put to work, which really in relative terms, especially in Europe, is very small. So what it means is that thankfully, and this has been sort of the idea of Index, but of a number of other firms, that the level of innovation that goes on in Europe is totally disconnected with the amount of venture capital that actually is injected to back entrepreneurs. So in relative terms to the US, for instance, where $25 billion is put to work in venture-backed companies every year, it's less than $4 billion in Europe.
When did you raise your fund? Could you raise it again? That's my question. In other words.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
Right?
Yeah, no, the last one took 3 weeks, and actually it was in April or March.
Okay, so it's still open.
And actually the notion that we kept was, let's keep it small, let's stick to our knitting and continue doing what we're doing. But it is going to be very interesting to see what happens, not only on the private equity side, but actually, probably the majority of you are tending to make a number of investments on your own and acting as angels/VCs. In the case of Marc, it's very, very obvious that he and his brothers are doing that. But
you're competing, right?
But one thing I wanted to say is that Google said yesterday publicly to all of us that close to half of the profits they make come from Europe. Which means that we make the Silicon Valley companies so wealthy and successful, we are responsible for half of their market cap. I think it's time we fund our own companies, and some of that market cap stays in Europe.
I agree with that. Here. So, any other question in the audience? Please.
You mentioned when you were talking that when you start up a business, one of the big issues is there's a lot of big competitors or big companies already in those spaces. But you look at online for the past 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, the successes have not come from established companies. They've all come from companies that have started up from next to nothing. Why do you think that's been the case, and do you think that's set to continue as well?
I can answer that. Yeah, I can answer that. So my theory is that you're much better off starting with a blank sheet of paper than a big balance sheet and revenues and customers and market share. Because what happens now is that there's so much the new technology and the internet are enabling you to do things, solve an old problem completely different ways. And that usually means that it's much, much cheaper. It's very difficult to be an established company, established revenue streams, to just disrupt yourself. I go to the, if you're the CEO for a public company, go to the, to your board, say, oh, by the way, we're going to completely just disrupt ourselves, and we're going to have a big decrease for a few years or a year or so in our revenues. It's very, very difficult. So you have all these different constraints as an established company. And what happens today, the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure is so amazing because you can, not only can you use, like if you have a great idea, and Skype was a very good example of that, and YouTube was also a good example if you have many others. If you have something which is great and you just put it out on the internet, people just discover it, and you don't need to have this massive amount of marketing. In the old days, it was all about building up a sales and marketing infrastructure, advertising your services, getting into retail. You don't need to do these things anymore. And also with all this thing we talk about Web 2.0 is that a lot of the building blocks are already there. So when you innovate, you can innovate on top of other technologies. So it's actually very lightweight to produce new services.
So if we could just have the slides that I prepared, because we're now onto the topic of Web 2.0. And we're on to the topic of, as you saw in the...
introduce Web 3.0?
Web 3.0 starts here. Actually, no. I think that Loic started it last year. If we could have the slides, that'd be great. We also saw that in that introductory video. What I wanted to focus on, hopefully, is sort of the fact that when you think about Web 2.0, and actually, Valleywag helped us with this, which is basically the Wall Street Journal of the internet. What you realize is that with Web 2.0, the entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs are getting younger and younger. So, Nicholas, you're very aging in this whole context. And if we go to the next slide.
That's what I had high yesterday.
That's right. No, of course. Well, you're 25, is my understanding. If we go to the next slide. This is actually Valleywag's, mostly Valleywag's information. Stelios, I believe you started EasyJet when you're 28.
28, yeah.
Jim Clark has had quite a bit of success as he's gotten older, although I think that he hit the jackpot at 50, and Shutterfly, I don't think he would call a success at this point, but he's too busy sailing in any case. But the point, and if you see it on the next slide, I've actually done a visual really showing you what I can do, just like that guy yesterday, the Swede. I can do slides too. Okay, that's it. We can take that one away. Thank you very much for showing them. But I did want to bring up the point about how do you continue to be entrepreneurial? How do you deal with the fact that there's some young punk who's actually making money on poker in his dorm room and starting a business that is looking at what you guys have done as success and want to take over what you have successfully done, in fact. Stelios, you start.
It's a problem.
That's it?
The next innovation in travel is going to come from another 28-year-old, not me, probably. Public companies, the earlier question was, why don't great innovative ideas, disruptive ideas come from public companies? I have a bit of experience sitting on board of 2 public companies I created. And the whole system is designed to preserve money, not to go and risk it. And you're supposed to focus and you're supposed to only do what you're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, shareholders get very upset. And it's only during bubble years that you're allowed to go out and diversify. And, exceptionally, companies are allowed to invest in an adjacent sector. And sometimes, we get catastrophic results as well. Enron. So at the end of the day, I think it is the next 28-year-old that's going to come up with the next idea because, we can't afford the time and, we have to preserve what we have. It's jungle, isn't it?
So
It is a survival.
I think that we're all too used to this new starting up businesses every 10 seconds. And if you think about some of our favorite brands in the world, like Coca-Cola, or what we were talking about yesterday in the advertising space, do not forget the power of your brand and the relationship with your customer. Sure, people are going to come up and try and copy you and do what you're doing. But if you focus on that end user and on what you're good at and what the relationship you have with your users, as long as you're converting them to come back yet time and again, and for them to tell their friends to come back, you can build a long-term brand. I don't think that we should be thinking in such short-term basis.
But brands get built overnight. I mean, Martin was saying this yesterday, that Google is the most popular brand or the most valuable brand in the world. And I'd be curious to know how much Google has actually spent on marketing in its first 3-4 years to build that brand.
But we have such an amazing service from them.
That's right. That's right. Martine, any thoughts on the youth side?
I
Your kids
think,
are going to run fun?
I think it also depends on the rivals you pick and the fight that you pick and the environment in which you move in. But I have had experiences like building Yeah.com where the demographic was 16 to 25, and by then I was 39 when I started it. And I think it's an issue. Can you connect to your demographics more than... Why wasn't Yeah.com started by people in that demographic? So we did these ads where we had people pissing on TV and saying Yeah.com, and everybody hated those ads, but our demographics, they love those ads. They like the idea of pissing on TV. And I think that, which was a subliminal message, go to the internet.
You have a turtle one on YouTube.
Yeah, the turtle ones. Yeah, we had those turtles, having sex. And it was, so the question is, how do you reach your demographics? Not how old are you. Can you connect to the people who you are talking to? And I guess Redstone, I don't know if the guy is still running Viacom. I was checking. But I mean, you can have guys in the 80s reaching kids who are teens. So the question is, can you connect to your demographics?
Yeah. I think we have time for 1 or 2 last questions. Otherwise, you guys are probably all hungry. I would like to thank our fantastic panel. There's an hour break where you're supposed to catch lunch, and we start promptly after an hour, so I guess 2:15, with Jonathan Citrain's panel, which is all about digital youth culture, which should be fascinating, in fact. Thank you.